Here's a cup of tea, Joe.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sporting Max. But today we're joined by Fox Footy commentator and sports media giant, Eddie McGuire. Welcome to the podcast, Eddie. It's an absolute honour and an absolute privilege to have you on. How you going at the moment?
I'm going well, Max. It's an honour and a privilege to be with you at the start of your career, mate. I started when I was your age, and I hope that you have as much fun and success as I've been able to have over the years. So hopefully in 20 years' time, I'll be able to say, Becca, he interviewed me one day.
Thanks, Ed. Now, growing up, I believe, and aware that you had a very strong family. Can you tell me about growing up and your family and a bit about where your family's from?
Well, I grew up in Broadmeadows. My parents came out after the war. They bounced around between England, Scotland and Ireland for a number of years, had two kids over there and realised there was really no hope. As far as concerned, it was really tough in those days after the war. And in Scotland in particular, it wasn't great if you were a Catholic. They wouldn't give you a job. And anyway, my mum decided, her brothers came out to Australia and had a building business that they started, and they just said, this is a great place, come out. So they came out with two kids, and a year later they landed in a house in Broadmeadows, and 6 years later I was born. Aussie member of our family, and then my youngest. So we lived out in Broadmeadows, and look, it was tough at times because money was tight, and everyone worked in the factories out there. My mum worked in factories, and my dad worked for the Border Works, and he just both of them dedicated their life to us, and it was a real opportunity. And what we were always about then was they believed that Australia was the land of milk and honey. So when that sunshine was on your back, you felt like you were a foot taller than what you actually were, and it was a great opportunity. So for them to come out and have a house one day to the year after they got on a boat in England to come to Australia was like a miracle compared to life after the war in rations and things in Scotland, Ireland and England. So they loved Australia, and we had this great attitude that was imbued by them in us, that anything was possible in this amazing land. And so we just thought it was an adventure from that moment on, and everything we did was a competition, and trying to have a go at whether it was playing sport or studying or whatever, playing music, everything was on, and they gave you trophies if you did well. It was fantastic.
So what sports did you play growing up?
I played every sport I could. Football, my main go. Played cricket in the summer, tennis, squash, athletics, Gaelic football. Everything that was going. I was in the brass band at school. I did theatre. Anything that was happening, I wanted to be a part of it. And I just thought from a very young age, if there was fun to be had, that was me. I was going to be involved in it. And I always thought that in the smorgasbord of life, going to be there, and I was going to fill my plate and have a go at everything I possibly could.
How do you rate yourself as a footy player?
I was a good junior player. I used to win the best and fairest most years and things like that. So that was a great thing for me because it actually gave a sense of self-worth. I won a scholarship at Christian Brothers College in St Kilda, and when I went up there, to me it was like going into the big league and being able to win the best and fairest in year 7. It gave me. Yeah, it does. It sounds funny now, but when I was in year 7 at the time, and for me though, it was really important to me. My brother had won a scholarship, and he too, various sort of each age group he played in, and for me it was actually it was really important to me because I was playing against big schools. It's one thing, junior footy out in Broady, but which was a good competition by the way, but. When I went out to CBC St Kilda, I was playing against De La Salle and St Bede's and St Joe's, North Melbourne, Aid, and all these big schools that were big to me. Anyway. And it gave me a sense of confidence that suddenly sort of mix it, I thought, in my own big league. CBC St Kilda's not that big now, but at the time it was. So they're important little stepping stones. It's not about being too far down the track. Take the wins as they come. Just keep accumulating the wins and set yourself up. Set goals for yourself, and for me it was a really important thing. So junior footy to me was the most important thing probably in my life, to be honest.
What was that like for you and your brother to earn a scholarship to go to a great school?
Yeah, well, for me it was everything. In grade 5 and grade 6, where I had to really study for it, I had some wonderful teachers in grade 6, an old name called Sister Matthew, who became a great friend over the years, and she was wonderful. I mean, my mum had been sick at that stage, so things were pretty tight, and the economy wasn't great, and yeah, there was a lot of issues at the time, and at one stage it didn't look like I'd be even able to go to the local school, and
Wow.
to win a scholarship was everything. So for me, it was as when I opened the letter and I won the scholarship was probably I describe it as getting Willy Wonka's golden ticket to life.
So
From that moment on, it was up to me. I got the scholarship, I got the chance of a lifetime, and from there it was up to me to make it work.
at what age did you sort of get like at what age and when did your sort of did journalism sort of spark your interest?
Well, I mean, it's funny. As a little boy, I remember as a 4-year-old coming out and imitating the Graham Kennedy show. So there's a bit of show business in there, I suppose, in my head always. But it wasn't until my brother received the cadetship at the Herald when I was in about grade 5, I think it was grade 4 or grade 5, that suddenly this became something that was an option. Living out in Broadmeadows.
Yeah.
You can tell there's more chance of me being in Hollywood than there was anywhere else. And Collingwood was like Hollywood for me as well. So these things just seemed to be happening elsewhere. Didn't really mind. Suddenly, when my brother got this job at the Herald, I thought, hello, there's a whole new world. When I went to CBC, I'd catch the train past the Herald building every day. So I always thought that I'd be a newspaper reporter first up. And then as it turned out, I was working for the newspapers when I was 13 and Australian Associated Press. So then that opened up. And it was only when I was in year 12, I applied everywhere. And it was the first year they didn't take any kids out of school. And I got a job on a country newspaper. I sat the exam at the Age and they gave me a job that was going to start in July in the new financial year. And out of nowhere, and I'll never forget, I remember I was at home on a Friday night and the phone rang, no answering machines in those days, no mobile phones. And for some fluke, Friday nights was always a night that I stayed back at school for either band practice or something else that was always on, or you might even catch up with your friends on a Friday night on the way home. Anyway, for whatever reason, I got home and the house was empty, which was also unusual. And the phone rang, David Johnson, the news reader from Channel 10. And he said, can I speak to Frank, my brother? And I thought, I was trying to find Frank for a story going on. And then I said, no, he's not home. He said, oh, is Eddie there? I said, oh, it is Eddie. He said, oh, after. And I said, oh, hi, hello, Mr. Johnson. And he'd interviewed me 2 weeks earlier when I went out to Channel. I'd applied and I got in for an interview. And he said, oh, well, we really like you and we'd like you to come and start work on Saturday week if that works. Now, as it turned out, I was working the home and away season for the Herald, and I finished at the Herald because the finals went to the senior people. And I finished on the Saturday, and the following Saturday I started at Channel 10, so I didn't miss a week. And that was it. That was the start of my television career as a 17-year-old, going at 10 in September 1982.
Can you expand on your time as an AFL statistician and cricket reporter?
Yeah. Well, again, that was lucky. My brother, they needed what was called a phone man in those days. Literally, you carried the phone and plugged it into the wall because what you do on the Herald, there used to be a paper called the Herald that came out in the afternoons. And on a Saturday, you'd dictate the match report as it went, which was my brother's job. And he needed a statistician, which was me, and it was only basic stats, but it was basically his assistant, carry the phone, make sure it was working. And then because he was pretty young and I was pretty young, what we used to do is he'd be filing his copy to a woman at the other end who'd be typing all the words to go on into the paper. And I'd run down into the rooms and get the injuries and reports. Now, most of the people who were doing my job were retired guys who were getting a bit of beer money. And they didn't really care. They just went down. But I thought this was the most exciting thing of all time, going into the rooms, or VFL it was, but AFL team, all the senior players. So I'd run down and, I'd learned how to watch to see. I knew which players had been injured. So then the Herald used to keep the paper open for me to come back and I'd start to file my own copy. And so that all started. And then once the footy season finished, they said, oh, we need AAP, Australian Associated Press, need a district cricket reporter. Your brother interested. Now, they didn't realise I was 13 at that stage. They were a bit older. And I'd do my brother's suit and, and it was funny because I'd play footy on a Saturday morning and sometimes I'd we'd go into the rooms. I go, gee, you can smell the liniment today. But
Mm.
it was me with my brother's suit over the top of it with dirty knees. But then what happened, I'd do the district cricket reporting, and there were a couple of stories that I was able to get that went onto the front page of the paper. And a couple of years later, I got invited to the awards ceremony, the Jack Ryder Medal, which was for it was the Brownlow Medal of Cricket for district cricket. And they found out how young I was, and instead of giving me the boot, they said, "Oh, this is great," and they actually promoted me. And I was able to cover international games. I covered England versus Victoria at the MG in the members, in the press box, sitting alongside Henry Blofeld from England, and Peter McGuire, all the greats of international cricket writing at that stage. And I was a 15-year-old boy, and they took me in for lunch, and it was great. Gave me a beer and my initiation, and it started from there. And so that's how it all happened.
How did that feel to be a 15-year-old and experiencing these sort of big things?
It was unbelievable. I was going home and I was still sharing a very small bedroom in a concrete commission house in Broadmeadows, and then living this other world experience. I'm sitting next to, as I said, not only the greats of journalism, but former stars. Richie Beno came in, Bill Laurie came in, all these people coming in, and suddenly you're in amongst it all. And they were very good to me. Like as I said, they took me to lunch. I brought my sandwiches, and they said, "No, come here." And they accepted me as a young kid, and I listened to every word that they were saying, watched everybody, and then read the papers the next day to see what they wrote about the day. Whether then suddenly I think, "Oh, geez, I had something they didn't see," or whatever. And and from that moment on, you really felt a part of it. So it opened up. I think journalism gives you an eyewitness account to the world. It gives you a ringside seat to history. And, it didn't matter who I was or where I was representing the Herald or Australian Associated Press and then Channel 10. And as a result of that, I had the right to ask questions of prime ministers, sports stars, businessmen, everybody. And suddenly you're there. You're holding the microphone in front of the biggest names of the day. And it's a privilege. And it's also a responsibility to not, to make sure you report accurately. And it was great. It was an adventure.
So what does sort of being able to report accurately mean to you? Because obviously, you muck up in sports media and everyone's all over it.
Yeah, well, they get away with it a lot more than they used to. Once upon a time, if you got something wrong, you'd pay for it, probably with your job. There's a lot more opinion. People just say what they think, and there's blogs and, they're on Twitter and all the rest of it like that. So there's a lot more people just saying things with no basis in truth or fact. And in fact, the fun days when you actually do a story that is based in fact, people attack you because it's not their opinion. Then later on down the track, you're justified in what you're saying, but it can be a long journey. I remember saying at one stage that on Triple M's Hot Breakfast that Tom Scully was going to go to where did he go? He went he was leaving Melbourne to go to GWS. And they went berserk, and I was president of Collingwood. You're sabotaging. Well, just let's wait and see what happens. And of course, the story was right. I wouldn't have gone with it unless I knew it 100%. And and that's what happens now. I remember saying the same thing about Mick Malthouse. We'll go to Carlton. You're throwing rocks at Carlton, and you're filthy at Mick Malthouse. No, I knew the story, and of course was vindicated down the track. But it's important. People can go with opinions and all the rest of it, but the essence of being a journalist is to get your facts right.
Now you transferred to Nine in 1993. What intrigued you about crossing over to another network?
Well, Channel 10 at that stage was going broke, and we had started a show. We being Steve Quartermaine and I, we were doing the news. We had a show called Sports Night, which rated really well. And I kept pitching this idea for a footy show type of thing. Anyway, that wasn't getting anywhere. In the meantime, Channel 7 and Channel 9 had offered me jobs over the journey to come and work in their newsrooms and things. And I didn't want to leave Channel 10 because they gave me my start. So I was very loyal to them. And in the end, the managing director of Channel 10 in Melbourne said, "You get offered a job, seriously consider it, because we're going to go into cost cutting here, I think your career is going to be better off maybe if you take the next job, if it's a good one, which was a shock to me because always they wanted me to stay. So the newsroom asked me to stay. Anyway, Ian Johnson at Channel 9 came to me and we bounced around a few ideas, and he liked the idea of this thing called the Footy Show. And so for me to go, I was sort of getting to the end of a lifetime of just being in a newsroom. I'd set in my mind that if I was 29 or 30 and still just, reporting in a newsroom, that I'd do something else, go and be a stockbroker or go and get a law degree or do something. Didn't want to be, in a newsroom all my life. And people do that. I mean, Tony Jones and Steve Quartermaine are doing. They were my contemporaries. They were my teammates and opponents at various stages. And it's a very competitive industry. But in my mind, I just thought I wanted to do something else. I didn't want to get trapped there. And then the opportunity to do television shows. And I'd started hosting things like the Uncle Toby's Ironman event, show with Quarters with Sports Night. And I started to think, actually, I like this. I like hosting, I like coming up with ideas, and I wanted to do other things. And I always enjoyed what people like Bert Newton and Graham Kennedy and these guys who did radio and television. And then people, Lou Richards, who would write in the paper and call the footy and then host a show. And, was a comedian at the same time. And Bill Collins and Mike Williamson, who'd call the footy in the afternoon and then host a show called the Penthouse Club, which was a variety show on Channel 7 at night time. And I loved that idea. I thought, this is great. So then the opportunity came and, we started the Footy Show and no one thought we got 6 weeks. They thought it would last 6 weeks and it went 25 years. So the difference. And that was huge for me going to Channel 9. Channel 9 was the biggest thing in television by that far. Kerry Packer owned it. All the stars were there. And suddenly you walk into Channel 9 and they used to put your photo up on the wall. And I walked in and there's my photo on the wall at Channel 9. Wow. A long way from...
That's when you know you made it big time.
That's when I knew that I was having a shot at the big time. Not that I'd made it. This was my shot. So the pressure goes on and you go, right, okay, this is it. Because just as my photo went up, someone's came off the wall. The wall you either got on and stayed or you got on and came off pretty quickly. So we got stuck in it. And thankfully, then my whole life opened up. The Footy Show was unbelievable. And then I started Triple M football so I could call the footy. I remember a job at Channel 7 and they said, well, you either come here if you want to call football or you don't get to call the footy. So I thought, well, there might be another way of doing this. So I started Triple M footy and got 2 ways. Had my own thing, and then of course the Footy Show exploded, and then a couple of years later, I was hosting the Grand Prix and the Commonwealth Games, and then Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and then exploded into hosting everything from National IQ tests to the Logies to all sorts, and it was a completely new world for me.
Just quickly on Steve Quartermaine, what was that like to work with him on Sports Night with someone who's so experienced and talented?
Yeah, but he wasn't experienced and talented then. We were the 2 young blokes, so we were mates. We'd be nightclubs and dinners and things together, and it was a huge experience for both of us. I was at Channel 10 before Quarters, and but I was only a cadet. I was only 18 or 19 years of age. And in fact, said they needed another person, and I said, I think this. I met him at the Tribunal. I said, "Great, the Tribunal said to me, okay, he's on the ABC." And Quarters came in and got the job. And so we were very close mates through all that period. So it was an excitement. So we would cover all the sport on the Sunday, do the news, and then we'd start writing the show with a guy called Steve Pritchard, who was producer, editor. And we would do an hour show completely edited, written by us and produced and go to 10 o'clock or 10:30 that night, which is almost unheard of to be able to, on old-fashioned typewriters as well. It wasn't Word processors or computers or anything else like that, and physical editing. I look back on it now and it was quite incredible. And I remember we got paid $1,000 and we thought, wow, this is unbelievable. But anyway, Channel 10 made a lot of money out of it, which was good. They made money, they gave us money, and that's how it works. And so for us it was an excitement thing. But we were great mates along the journey. But as I said, it was pretty competitive between him and Quarters myself. Like Bruce McAvaney was in there with us as well, and he was a great mentor to us. Bruce was, I think, about 10 or 11 years older than me and was great to me. He really encouraged me in calling the football and supported me every step of the way. And so we had a wonderful experience. Great friends, great excitement, getting to know all the players, and Dermot became a close friend, and all the Collingwood boys, and it was just great fun.
How would your role at Nine evolved or developed throughout the years?
Well, I started off, coming across to Nine's News and starting there, and then the Footy Show. I thought it was a done deal. I found out a little bit later it wasn't necessarily a done deal, but Ian, the managing director, was pushing it, and David Leckie, who was the CEO who died only yesterday, he said, right, you've got 6 weeks, and he believed in it, but wasn't quite sure. So they gave us 9:30 Thursday, which was a bit of a graveyard slot, and then we turned it into the highest rating show on television. So it took off from there. So from there, the Packers came into my life. Suddenly, instead of just Kerry, you actually got to meet Kerry Packer, and then they were, doing your contract. So that was a itself. And suddenly you went from being sort of, a newsroom reporter to being in TV, and then, what they classified as a TV star, the contract and all that type of thing, and the negotiations, and that opened up a whole new world. So the business of television became far more important to me. So a lot of people stay on air. What I tried to do was I learnt from the people who were running the show. So I learned about what sales meant and how it worked and what ratings meant, and how promotion of yourself within the organisation was as big a part of play as actually doing the show. So when you hear the word show business, it's actually two words. It's learning to show, and then I got stuck into learning to do the business. And ultimately that changed, and then I was getting advertising for the shows, because the more money they made, the more money I could make, which I like the idea of. And that's the way we did it. I'd go pretty hard in my contract negotiations, and then we'd all hug each other because they were happy for me to stay. Make sure they made more money, which they were happy about. And then the boss would get a bonus, and we're all happy at the end of the year, and they give you more money and give you more experiences. And basically the way it works. And that's why I've always done it on radio. And, I always kept radio going because that promoted the television shows, but it also meant that they didn't have too much control of you as well. You had a fallback position. And so that all built up. And as long as I was prepared to do the work, we're able to get these things going. And as I said, I looked at the careers of Graham Kennedy and Bert Newton and all these people for me, and they were multifaceted in the way they approached it. So, yeah, that was me. And so from there, I learnt the business, and then ultimately became, I suppose, the CEO of the Nine Network, and started my own business, which we run to this day, called McGuire Media and Jam TV. And with a lot of production and a lot of shows, and, we're right on the cutting edge of things now. And that's what I like doing, inventing ideas.
Can you take me through the first day of the AFL Footy Show and coming on set and recording?
Well, yeah, I remember I was at Studio 9, which was a legendary place at Channel 9 where all the big shows had been, all the variety shows. And we actually were doing the old Don Lane, Ernie Sigley, Graham Kennedy, Bert Newton time slot, Denise Drysdale. And I was out the back, and a guy called Max Morrison was the floor manager, and he'd been floor manager on all those shows. Took it, which is good luck in show business terms. And Sam and I were standing out the back, and Sam looked at me and said, "Now, Ed, what do you think we're going to do out here?" I said, "Mate, let's just make it up." We had no scripts or anything else. I said, "Let's just sportsman's night." We had a rundown. We had actually not even sat at the set before. And if you actually listen to the very first episode of the Footy Show, it breaks into the Don Lane theme song. And I started playing tennis, which was Don Lane's signature, as an homage to the shows that went before us. So that was clearly in our mind. Sam and I, we were doing a variety show. We weren't just doing a footy show. And as a result of Channel 7 stopping us from having any vision of football, it stopped us from being, this is a perfect tackle, or here's the mark of the day, and rehashing what had happened the weekend before, to making us think outside. And what we did is we wanted to do a show about the great things of footy, the personnel. No coaches, didn't want coaches on. We're sick of hearing from coaches. We want to hear the play. We want to get the players. So what we would do is we'd have one legend player. So the first week, I think it was Tim Watson. one character, which was Doug Hawkins, and one young gun like a Stephen Silvani, and that's the way we did it. And so we had all these different types of guys, different parts of their career. You know, we got on the guys who got into trouble and gave them an opportunity to explain themselves. It did, yeah. So we saved careers. You know, Wayne Carey would get himself into trouble and we'd give him an opportunity to explain himself. And then he was able to rehabilitate himself and apologise. And, you know, we played a massive role on the racial vilification situation with Michael Long. You know, my brother and I helped Longy with his long walk, particularly my brother. But when he came on the Footy Show, we gave him the right platform because at that stage, they should just cop it. What are they complaining about, these Indigenous players? And Longy said, no, I'm sick of being called a black so-and-so. And we were able to bring it through. So they're important issues, HFP in football and things like that we're able to do, as well as the fun. And, of course, the journalism side of it was we broke big stories nearly every week. So it was much-watched television. It was exciting. When you walked out, the crowd would go nuts. We had an audience. And you'd sit down, and if you're about to break a big story, what you could hear was the silence. And you could almost, not only in the studio, but right around Melbourne, people going, shut up, shut up.
Yeah.
And you're delivering it down the barrel on Channel 9. Wow. That was exciting. It was amazing.
You mentioned Jam TV before. Where did the idea or inspiration come from to start up your own TV and broadcasting company?
Yeah, it started before I was the CEO. I could see that this was where it was going. The content was going to be a big play. And while I didn't quite understand at the time what the internet would be, I could see there was something there. I started a business called SportsView, which actually owned all the internets of the AFL sides, of about 6 or 7 back in in about 1999-ish, I think it was. It was a while back now. And so that was forward thinking. And wish I'd have kept it. It would be worth millions now. But I think we gave it back to the AFL and to the clubs. So I was always thinking about these different things and owning my own production company or building up so that I could develop my own ideas, because it's very hard things on television. You have a look at a television schedule. There's not too many moving parts, you know, every night for, 12 years or so, 5 o'clock is hot, 6 o'clock's the news, 7 o'clock's a current affair, you know.
Yeah.
Not too many new shows coming on until late at night. So trying to get in and come up with your own ideas, I thought was the way to go. And I looked at successful television people over the years, like Reg Grundy, who was able to produce his own shows, and he became a very successful and wealthy entrepreneur right around the world. And people like Mike Willesee, who went from being a reporter to being a producer of shows. And to me, that seemed to be the area, you know, even people like Paul Hogan and John Cornell got their break, and then they had their own shows. And I thought, okay, this is the way it's got to go. So we're able to do that. And then, we're producing shows for radio and television, and then for pay TV, and now for, the internet and all these other areas, podcasts, etc. And now, we did the Amazon documentary last year, which was a huge success. And we're doing more and more of those things. So it's good. It keeps you busy. It's not only the ideas you have for your own shows, but other ideas and staying vital in an industry so you don't get pigeonholed.
I believe you started the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, now Hot Seat, in 1999. How did that opportunity arise?
Well, it was controversial at the time because people said to me, oh, you don't want to become a quiz show host, as if that was a down. I thought, well, everyone in television who's done something has had to be a quiz show, including all those names I've mentioned, from Bert Newton to, Reg Grundy was a quiz show host and then became the quiz show owner and king and billionaire. So quiz shows weren't worrying me, but I wanted to get more into the show business side of it. The show opened up in England, and we'd heard a bit of a buzz about it, that this show was unbelievable. And I knew that there were a lot of people at Channel 9, the big stars at the time. I was only still an emerging performer and probably known more in Melbourne and didn't have as big a national profile. So they asked me if I'd consider it, and they gave me, I considered it, or I considered it on the way in to the meeting, and I was there the next day at 7 a.m. to make sure no one got in before me in case they'd asked. And I said, yeah, away we go. I just thought it was a brilliant concept. And it was the highest rating show on television, for the most successful quiz show in the history of TV around the world. They had a movie, Slumdog Millionaire, on the back of it, which won the Academy Award. And now, Hot Seat itself has been dominant for the last 12 years and continues to be great. So yeah, that was a huge gift. It wasn't one I invented. That was just one that came my way, and I was able to host and be the face of in Australia. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. Still 5 o'clock every night, I'm still doing it. And as my company produces it, so we've gone on to do other things with it as well. But it's been a gift from God. That one, that's I love it. And every time I sit there doing it, and we churn out 6 shows, 7 shows a day these days, every person comes on is important because it's their opportunity. But it's been wonderful for me in my career. Yeah, I love it.
What's that like? I mean, I remember watching still watch the show, and I remember watching it sitting back in my grandparents' living room after school. Every day they used to pick us up and having something to eat or some chips or something, watching you on Hot Seat quiz all these people. What's it like to sit down and, then you have to kick people off and then see people win money?
Well, Max, I don't have to kick them off. They get it wrong. So they kick it off.
Yeah.
So, I look at the positive. I'm giving somebody the chance. But your story, Max, is exactly what I love about the show. And I've now had that for generations. I mean, I've been doing this show a lot longer than you've been on this earth. And now but with your grandparents. And, I was only a young bloke when I started doing it. I was only, what was it? I was 30, what was it, 1999. So I was about 34. And so that was a great start for me. And now there's generations of people have watched it. And I get a lot of people coming on now who say, I used to watch it with my grandparents, and now my granddad's passed away, and he used to love it and used to want me to go on, and now I'm doing it. And it's become a rite of passage. And you're right, 5 o'clock before the news, people are home from school, cooking the dinner, playing along. And, a lot of older people like it because it keeps them mentally stimulated and they fun of it, and a lot of young people like yourself are watching it, hoping to the answers.
Yeah.
You got 4 to pick from. You can have a bit of a guess, can't you? It's not like you have to know the answer. You can try and figure it out.
Yeah.
And we always love yelling at the people who don't know the answers.
Yeah.
Even though I'm trying to help them. And people love that as well. So it's your story is the story that makes it really happy for me to continue being part of the show.
Now, you mentioned becoming the CEO of Channel 9 in 2006. I understand you had to not be on the AFL Footy Show or commentate games or host Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for that role. And what was the sort of short-term tenure as CEO? How did you find your time in that role?
Well, I was there for 2 years, and the role changed because I went up to become the CEO to build the business and build the production side based on what I was doing with McGuire Media and Jam TV and the On Air. Then suddenly out of nowhere, we got made a massive offer to buy it. And James Packer was reading that media was going to fragment, and we were able to sell it for $5.5 billion.
Wow.
It might have been worth 2, and we got 5.5. So we decided that was a good deal. And it was as good a deal in the media probably that's ever been done. So that changed things completely. So then it went from being a growth industry at Channel 9 to grow the business into cutting costs and things. That really wasn't my caper. So I did that for 2 years, and then I missed being on air. There was no doubt about it, because I realised that's what I do. That's what I'm good at, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
Business side of it is something I really love as well, and that's why I've been able to continue with my own business. And don't forget, I was Collingwood at that stage as well, which is was a small business that became a big business. So I loved doing all those things. I sat on boards. So I had a lot going on in my life. So I was busy when I was up there for the 2 years that I was the CEO. We sold it, and then I made a decision that I'd get out of that and do something else.
Triple M's Hot Breakfast began in 2009 with yourself and Luke Darcy on the radio. Can you expand on your experience and the differences you noticed between TV hosting and radio hosting? Obviously, radio setting and environment being a bit more relaxed, you can wear what you want and things like that.
Well, I wore a suit anyway, so I didn't worry about it because I always went to work straight after. And I'd be doing crosses to the Today Show, and it was these days podcasts and Zoom like this one as well. So so for me, I always loved the radio. I was lucky enough to do breakfast radio for 12 years before all this with the Richard Stubbs Breakfast Show and the D Generation with the Working Dog team. And still today, Rob Sitch and Jane Kennedy are two of our closest friends. So we built great friendships. And then this comedian by the name of Mick Malloy came on and we became great friends. And later on, he would come on and be my partner with Luke Darcy on the Hot Breakfast. So I did radio for a long time. And as I said, we were able to start Triple M football, which was a big play. And then I did a show with Bridget Duclos and Dermot Brereton, my own show, which was a top rating show. And so we had a lot of success on the radio. And radio actually pays very well as well, which is something that I liked mentioning to you. So if you can do something you like and get paid well for it, it's a really good experience. So radio was always there, and Triple M, because it was a younger style of radio station, it gave you an opportunity to do things a bit differently as well. So where I thought things were going. Now, I started Triple M when I was 21 or 22 years of age. So I was in there early, and that, as I said, that helped me promote the segment I did on Channel 10 in those days called Doing the Rounds. So I'll sort of go back to there for a second. So what happened, I kept getting these offers from 7 and 9, and to keep me, they gave me my own segment, which was the first on TV news to have. And I'll tell you a quick little story. I wasn't getting paid that much in those days. They give me a pay increase and things, and I was going okay. But I used to think there was other reporters at Channel 10 who paid more than me, who weren't paid the amount of work I was doing. And I was promoting it on the radio and things like that. So what I was able to do was supplement, what I was getting paid on Channel 10 with what I was getting on Triple M, and I started to make some reasonable money. So, but what I did was I was promoting myself, and a good friend of mine used to buy advertising on Channel 10. And I said to him one day, I'm getting sick of this. I'm doing all this. These other people are getting more money than me. He said, oh, no, you're looking at the way. He said, think of it this. I pay $10,000 to get a 30-second ad on before you come on. Expensive ad on the whole of Channel 10. Did you? No, I didn't. This is when I realised I had to learn about the business of it. I said, right, okay. It's unbelievable. They're paying me with one ad, basically in a week. Not even that. Half a week, 3 days later. They're really doing well out of me. So I worked out, and what he said was quite true. He said, don't think of it as what they're paying you. Think about how much exposure they're giving you. So that did that, and I was doing about 6, 7, 8 minutes a night, and I multiplied that by sort of 10,000 times 2. This is good exposure. So from that on, I didn't ever work for anybody again. I worked for myself and used their exposure and got paid by them to promote what I was doing, and at the same time deliver them money and ratings. And that's the name of the game. So fast forward back to the radio again, it's the same thing. So when I came back from Sydney, Triple M's ratings were pretty low, and they came and said, do you want to have a crack at doing it? And I said, yeah, I want to do it, but I want to do this style of show. And we were back at the number 1 FM, and it was very, very successful for another 12 years. So all up for somebody who doesn't really like getting up early in the morning, 4:30 in the morning for about 25 or 26 years, and with another 6 in between calling football, doing drive, and a couple of years in between where I wasn't doing radio. So it's been great. It's been really great. And I love working with Mick Malloy and Will Anderson and Luke Darcy, and we've had other people on the show. People, but they were the main people, and it was great fun. I loved it.
Over the years, you've hosted sort of multiple TV shows that have eventually got cancelled. How do you react in these situations when you got to bounce back and there's difficulty?
Well, we haven't had that many, to be honest. We do some of them. Some of them are shows that are only going to have a short run. So we did a show called This Is 100, and that did really, really well for the year. But it was always going to be a show that was a bit more gimmicky, as opposed to Hot Seat, which is a generational show, millionaire generational show. Other shows, sometimes you're at the mercy of the time slot. Sometimes you're at the mercy of programmers who react a bit too quickly. Some shows, you look at Have You Been Paying Attention is a good example. Didn't rate for the first year, probably because Channel 10 didn't have anything else to put on. They kept going. Now it's one of the most successful shows in television, and that's why, from Working Dog and Channel 10 realising that these people are really smart. Sometimes you with people. But show's been cancelled. It's like anything in life. You don't worry about failure. If you've got a fear of failure all the time, you'll never do anything. If people would still be living in a cave if people did say, "Come on, let's step outside and see what's going on." So you learn from them. Sometimes a lot of shows you do might be a year, 2, 3 years ahead of their time. You might be ahead of the curve on things. So there's learning experiences from things, but no, you don't worry about things like that. I mean, people in the media love always to have the headline sacked, axed, cancelled. It's a big headline. People love all that sort of stuff. But when you're in the business, you understand what the business is. And, people like Darren Hinch, for example, I think he's sacked 25 times. He says it. I think he makes up the numbers sometimes. But he's been a brilliant broadcaster over, he's been broadcasting now for probably 60, 70 years. Nearly. I'm sure he started as a young man as well in newspapers. But, there's no effort without failure, as the man in the arena, the speech by Theodore Roosevelt, which ends with the lines, "So that you shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." So sometimes to enjoy the victories, you got to cop a beating every now and again as well, just to realise it. So the key thing that I want to say to you, Max, is this: you'll always have critics. You'll always have people who want to have a go at you. You'll have bullies in your life. You'll have people who go after you, and the media do that to me at times. And, when I was a kid growing up, I used to be, scared walking to school because, pretty tough area, Broadmeadows, and then you go to school. And I thought they'd throw rose petals in front of me every time I had success. What I realised was every time I have a success, there are people who don't like that. And you go past one group and you're going successful and they don't like it. Then you go again, and a bit further on, they tell everyone they went to school with you and proud of you and things like that. It's human nature for people who want to have a go at you if you've got some go. So what you have to do is you have to realise that you have to set your own goals, and you have to be determined and listen to the critics, because sometimes they tell you things that you don't want to hear that you might need to hear, but don't be bowed by them. There's always in life, if you're going to do anything in life, people who will criticise you. You will never get a free run. You'll always criticise. Don't forget, to be Prime Minister of the country, you generally got 51, 52% of the population, which means 49 or 48 of the population didn't vote for you. Okay? So that's always the case. Now, you know what? You can do well out of people not agreeing with you as well. There's a lot of shows that people watch because they don't like the host or disagree with the host or want to have a fight with the host. That's part of life as well. But don't ever be bowed by people criticising you or having a go at you or things like that. That is a given. What you've got to learn is the mechanisms on how to rise from that, how to manoeuvre yourself around things, and then how to make the most of your situation. And that's what I've done all my life. Every single day of my life, from grade 5 onwards, or even before that, I've had to take on people who are there every day to have a whack at me. So even when you're at your most successful, people are there to go. And people don't want to believe things. They ask you your opinion on things. You tell them honestly what happened, but they want to see it a different way. You can't be in control of what other people say about you. And it's all about what you believe of yourself. Be a good person. Do the right thing. Pay your taxes. Do all those things. You can sleep at night and have a go. And as Theodore Roosevelt said, so that you shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. But the Shakespearean line out of Julius Caesar that I always like as well, and it says, "There is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is left wallowing in shallows and miseries." And what that means is, when you get your chance, in and take it. Don't worry about it. Take no prisoners. Go your hardest. People will tell you every single time. Everything I've ever done, I've been told you can't do. When I was a kid, how can you be writing papers? You're only 13 years of age. Okay. How can you? I remember being told, what are you going to TV for? You haven't got a voice. Television, radio. You haven't got a radio voice. When I was going to Channel 10 and the radio, you can't do radio and do news at the same time. Channel 9, they'll chew you up and spit you out.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do a television show about football. No show ever has rated in prime time about sport. Then the show won't work because you're not allowed to have any vision of football. On we go again. Don't be the CEO. You can't be the president of Collingwood and be on the television at the same time. Blah, 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 blah. Every single thing I've been told in life is you can't. And still to this day, I get told I can't do things. And you know, sometimes they're right. Sometimes I can't do them. I'm not going to die in a ditch wondering whether or not I should have had a go or not. So I'm all about having a go. But Max, for you and your listeners and your viewers today, don't ever let people get on top of you.
Yeah.
Don't air negativity, hold you back. Have an open heart. Don't be frightened of failure. In fact, look for success. Most people look at things as an opportunity to fail instead of an opportunity to succeed. And getting ideas to actually go is success in its own right. Getting them to work is the ultimate success, and they don't always work. But you know, it's good fun trying.
In 2012, you arrived at Fox Footy as a commentator in sort of a panelist role. Can you elaborate on what it's like? That was like for you starting out at Fox and maintaining roles also at Channel 9 with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and sort of hot seat in the Olympic coverage.
Yeah, so there was a bit going on, wasn't there? So
yeah.
I thought at that stage, pay TV was where sports was heading, and Fox fell, and they wanted to get their words, a big name. To show that this was where it was all going. I'd called the footy on Channel 9, which was I was part of the negotiations with that, which was a really good period where I got to work with James Packer and Kerry Packer and Ian Johnson and the likes there, doing all those deals. And that's where I really got an insight into how you really do big deals, and Sam Chisholm at the end, and things like that. And that's where I think they sort of thought I might have had an opportunity to be a business person as well as an on-air person. So the footy was there very much. So the Olympic Games came, and I suppose what was good about hosting that was, in the first instance, it was my idea to go after those Olympic Games when I was of 9. We had a special task force, a secret task force with a guy called Gary Fenton, who was the most successful television executive in Australia when it came to the Olympics. A guy called Jeff Brown, who I brought with me to Sydney, who became the managing director, who's now hoping to be the president of Collingwood. And then we brought in as our partners Foxtel, Kim Williams, and a guy, Patrick Delaney. And then when I left, they continued with this, and David Ginge came on, and Ginge, sensational executive in television, and they were able to close the deal. And it was great. They closed the deal over, I think they might have been in Geneva, and they rang me at 3 in the morning and woke me up, and they said, the good news is Operation F, which is what we called it for Gary Fenton, has been successful. And the good news is we want you to host it. And we're going to London and Vancouver. It was fantastic. So, yeah, I went to Foxtel, and that was a pure sports play, if you like. We had other ideas. We build a lot more television shows into that, but that didn't happen in that period. We're going to do like a big footy show. Ultimately, that didn't happen. But, calling the footy and hosting the footy and doing various shows, hosting the boxing. I did a show called Eddie McGuire Tonight, EMT, which was, I look back on now, and was actually super successful in what we did with all that type of thing. And it's been great. Yeah. So
now Fox Footy commentating, can you expand on your sort of entirety of your time at Fox?
Oh, just calling the footy. As I said, I started calling the footy on the VFA at Channel 10 when I was, I think I was about 19 or 20 years of age. The first game I ever called of VFL AFL was the Battle of Britain game, where Alistair Clark King hit Stuart Agger, that big game over there. And Bruce McAvaney and I both ended up on the front page of The Guardian. Little did I know that was the start of things to come, being on the front page. So our games, the first games we called were in Vancouver, London, Vancouver, and then Tokyo, which is quite incredible. And then my next game, I called the VFA. And then my next game of calling football was I got a call up in grand final week to call the grand final of 1990, So my life ambition of calling a Collingwood president came out of nowhere, brother. And the irony of that was that my family broke for Essendon. So always when I was calling premierships for Collingwood in the backyard, it was against Essendon. I called one game, it was the Collingwood premiership. And then that opened up. I did some community football calling just to build my skills. And I used to do a lot of sportsman's nights and charity nights so that I learned how to stand in front of an audience and learned. So you do them for free and you got a lot of flying hours. And then ultimately we started Triple M football and then Channel 9, which I think was the best coverage of football that's ever happened, ever. It was unbelievable the way we used to cover it. It was just a halcyon golden era. And now it's fantastic. You know, it's a designated footy station. So I love that. So, yeah, it's been a wonderful experience calling the footy. And I'm so lucky in that I've been able to call sports, host sports, host major events, host elections. We went over with the hot breakfast and hosted the Trump election. The Joe Hockey's office, the Australian ambassador to the United States, with all these people in Washington D.C. I've been so lucky to be involved in so many different things. So yeah, it's been an exciting and fulfilling life so far.
What do you enjoy most about hosting those events like the Trump election and things like that?
Just being there, being right in amongst it, seeing it firsthand, being able to bring and paint a word picture for people back here in Melbourne, what's going on, how it feels. I love the analysis, working through where things might go to, trying to play the role. What I try to do these days, tonight on Footy Classified, is to explain, what it was like last year being in the War Council, keeping the AFL going with people like Lachlan and, the other presidents who were involved in it. This year I said we should have started early and we should have had a footy frenzy. We should have played 17 games. Now, that's turned out that would have been a smart idea, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a wrong idea what they did, but now we've got to get into the next stage. So now, tonight, we want to talk about, okay, again, if I was running the place, how would we do it? Where would we go from here? So that's the thing I like to do. I love a battle of ideas. I like the challenge of coming up with ideas, thinking of things that haven't happened before, how to go about doing things. I've been pushing for shorter quarters for a long, long time. I still think revolutionise the way we umpire the game. I still think that we should be playing the game in a different way as far as TV is concerned. You've got to get the money in to pay. People now want to watch it more at home in times where they want to watch it. So weekends on a afternoon, I think Thursday night's the place for footy these days. So, there's all that type of thing. So, Max, that's what it's all about. As you can tell, I still get excited every day about ideas and trying to make things happen.
In 2018, you announced that in the year following that in 2019, that the Footy Show would take up sort of a new format of the show with new hosts. Just the year in 2017, you returned to the show. What was that like, and how did that decision approach to try and revamp the show?
Well, we tried to revamp it, but in the end, there were a few restrictions on what we wanted to do, and it wasn't the show that I wanted to come back and do in the end. So then decided was that, look, the world had changed. There had been a lot more. The term woke comes into play, and a lot of that, people like Sam Newman, who used to, be able to have a sense of humour at different things, that had been cancelled in a lot of ways. So then, Nine decided we'll have one last roll of the dice and we'll try an ensemble, and it didn't captivate people. Irony is that Mick Malloy and his team are doing a great show called Front Bar, which in a lot of ways the old gags of the Footy Show with their own spin. I'm not saying they copied the Footy Show, but it's got more of a feel of the old Footy Show than it does anything else. And so I think at that stage, look, after 25 years, people just wanted to kill it off. And Nine also were keen to use the money. It was a reasonably expensive show in the end to produce. So it just changed, and it's time it come and finished. So that was it. We pulled the curtain down on it, and as a result of that, now we have Wednesday Classified and Monday Classified and the Sunday Footy Show. So Nine still has these major shows, in prime time that are doing really well. Different format, different cost base to what the Footy Show was, but still delivering ratings and still delivering influence and still delivering all the things that we wanted out of those shows, but just taking a different way. So that's the thing, Max. Nothing lasts forever. It's about adapting. Darwin's theory of evolution is not the survival of the fittest. It's who adapts fastest survives. And that's what it's all about in the media.
Sort of after trying to revive the show and then announcing that it was sort of over, you guys did a sort of a grand final, a footy show farewell with you, Sam Newman, Marmalade and Rebecca Madden. Can you guide me through that evening from your perspective?
Well, going right back when we first did the show at the Rod Laver Arena, again, people didn't want to do it. We were just on a wave of confidence and success. And Sam and I and Trev and the team at that stage, we just wanted to do things big. So we took it to London and we did it at the Theatre Royal. And I'll tell you a funny story. The network were a bit, one of the executives was a bit dodgy about it and fearful that it would cost too much money. And I put my credit card down and said, I'll underwrite it. That's and we put a little ad in the papers in England. There used to be a paper for Australians that used to hand out for free. Anyway, they opened the sales the next day, and you had to actually go and buy a ticket, and it sold out as quickly as they could sell the tickets. And they rang up and said, "Can you do a whole season here?" We said, "No, it's not that type of show." And it was a smash hit, and it was unbelievable. Still, the grand final footy show, the first one, all of them, to be honest, but the first one when we walked out and the place was jumping, and then we did London, and then we did two in London, another one in Munich. Were unbelievable. They were just shows that I'll never forget, and people won't do, I don't think, going forward. They're just sensational. So we're always about pushing the envelope, and then to do the last one again at Rod Laver it was a great thing. Rated through the roof, packed house. Everything was great. Sam was in great form, and we were able to do it. And getting Trev back for one last go was a nice full stop on the whole thing.
I read last year that you debuted a TV show for America named Aussie Football Rules America with Eddie McGuire. Where did the inspiration for that show come about?
Well, I thought that a couple of things. One, there's an American executive called Scott Greenstein at Sirius XM, and he is an American who loves footy. And he knew about me, and we talked about different projects. And so we've got a few projects that we're working on at the moment. So it's, again, about these situations. Also, for me, I could see that betting was becoming very big in America. Up until this year, you could only sports bet out of Las Vegas and Nevada. Now it's going right around. It's going to become bigger and bigger. And at that stage, it looked like Australian rules football might be one of the few sports in the world to keep going. And the first week we did it went through the roof. Now, sadly, we had to have 6 weeks off, and then the Americans got the NBA into the bubble, et cetera, et cetera. But we thought that there was an opportunity to give an Australian show into America, and it did very, very well. At the same time, we were able to get the game of the round onto Sirius XM, and also we're able to push to get the vision of the game of the round back onto ESPN, and also onto Fox Footy, not Fox Footy, Fox Soccer in America. So suddenly we went from having it just sort of an obscure television station on Fox Soccer to ESPN, prime time, and on radio. So we found that there was another audience out there, and so that was really good fun.
Now you were president of the Collingwood Football Club from 1988 until earlier this year. 1998 until earlier this year. You've seen a premiership in 2010, and grand final appearances. How do you reflect on your time at Collingwood, and how did you, first of all, sort of earn that role?
Well, it was one of those things. Collingwood was in a bad way at that stage, and I had no aspirations whatsoever of being the president of the Collingwood Football Club. Didn't fit anything I was doing as far as my career was concerned. But sometimes these jobs choose you; you don't get to choose them. And I was fearful at that stage that the AFL were trying to merge teams, and Collingwood was starting to, as big as Collingwood had been and was. It was starting to nosedive and was starting to lose confidence, and the Victoria Park was falling apart and it was lost its way. And there were great people at the club, but we just needed to maybe have a new thought process in there. So I was only a young guy. I look back now and think, God, what was I thinking? A bit bold to do what I did, but we got in there and got stuck into it. And So I'd like to think that I've played a role in what we did on the Footy Show. Don't forget, football about broke in the early 90s, and we turned it into prime time television at a time. In 87, none of the free-to-air stations wanted to have footy. Ended up being on the ABC more out of a charity than anything else. And footy was in big trouble. And we were able to get in there, and suddenly players became personalities in their own right again. Player managers, there hardly any player managers in those days. Craig Kelly was on the show. He was a centre-half for Collingwood, and Ricky Nixon was a PE teacher at Carey Grammar. And suddenly all these things started to go, and we played a huge role in that. And then, hopefully my time at Collingwood saw us look at becoming big international brands, being a dying local entity. Suddenly the MCG was our home ground. We built the Holden Centre, what is now the Holden Centre, the Lexus Centre, back in, major international sponsors, first team to make $1 million profit. And suddenly, no one wanted, in 2000, no one wanted to play on Friday nights. And I said, we'll play on Friday nights. Friday nights. And so we looked at it I looked at it more as a great love for the game of football, but where it needed to be, and with the combination of business and show business and media. I could see media was where it was all going to go.
Yeah.
And in the middle of it, I'm talking to the Packers and to David Leckie and Ian Johnson, and working on these things day in, day out. Whereas once upon a time, it would have been about how many pies could you sell or jumpers in the souvenir store. I was coming at it from a different point of view, from where sponsorships were and prime time exposure on the Footy Show, which was ahead of time. So I'd like to think that in some way I played a role in changing football, VFL football, from being a local Melbourne only Saturday afternoon game with one game on a Sunday in Sydney to playing a role in turning it into the biggest sport in Australia with a lot of other people. Don't think but I'd like to think I played an entrepreneurial role in doing that, and then subsequently, supporting women's football and women's sport. Collingwood is now went from being a pretty blue collar male only show to having its 50 women's split, having women's netball and women's football and charitable organisations and the Magpie Nest and all these types of things, which made us more than just a footy team.
We recently had Craig Hutchison on the podcast as our 50th episode. What's it like to work on Footy Classified with him?
Well, I work with him. He does Monday and I do Wednesday. But we produce the show. But but Hutchie's a great success story. And I always watch Hutchie with great affection. He's his own man, and he can be a pollywag. But he was a great reporter, and when he was a young bloke coming through, I'd like to think I offered the hand of friendship to him a couple of times. One time I watched him on Channel 10 News, and he looked like a drowned rat. He was out it was raining, and I thought he did a great story. I rang him up and I said, "Congratulations, that was a good story." And he said, "Oh, I've just had the boss, give me a belting for didn't like the way the story was." I said, "What are you doing now?" And I invited him around for dinner, and he came around. I said, "Go upstairs and have a shower." Gave him one of my tracksuits, and he came down. My wife, Carla, cooked him. But I always thought Hutchie had, a lot of chutzpah. He went to America and he went down a different road, completely different road from me. But he was always playing a bigger game. And I thought, from a young bloke from the country who came up and took them on, I think it's great. And I think what he's doing now is sensational. And I wish the best. I am. I genuinely proud of him. And I actually hired him onto Channel 9. And then ultimately, my organisation produces the Monday night show. So technically he does work with my organisation. But Hutchie's a fantastic success story, and I wish him well. And I think he does a great thing.
Now, have you got any advice for any aspiring sports media talents out there who want to get to the next level and get into broadcasting and commentating and sports TV and radio?
Yeah. So the first one I'll say is this. Everybody, it seems, who dreams like you, Max, of being involved in this caper, get into the business for about 10 minutes and then they become jaded. And they, we don't get the story, or the AFLs, and they whinge and moan and bitch and carry on, okay? So the first thing is you make your own luck, okay? Gary Players, the harder I work, the luckier I get. That rings true, okay? So don't just fall in line with everybody else. Be excited. Look at what's going on around the world. You know, that's where, and I suppose myself to a degree have maybe had the jump on people, and we always look at what's possible, not what's impossible. So that's what it be, you know. Ask, what was the George Bernard Shaw line of ask not what you can do for your country. So I'll take that back. That was John F. Kennedy said, ask not what you can do for your country, but not ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. But George Bernard Shaw also said, some people see things that are and ask why. Other people see things that have never been and ask why not. And that was read out at the funeral for Robert Kennedy, but it was by George Bernard Shaw. And that always struck me. Look for what people think is impossible and make it possible. You know, Jeff Bezos flew his own rocket into space this morning. How unreal is that? It's unbelievable. And everyone said, don't do it. It's too expensive. It's a folly. Who knows what comes of it because he's done that now. So that's what it is. So a lot of people, every time the media changes, when I started it when I was 18 at Channel 10, everyone said, oh, you've missed the golden era. Right? And every year after the last year was the best year. And it's all changed now. And it's the fact that you, Max, can interview me on Zoom. I remember when I started, we were lucky if we could get a signal out of footy training to do a live. Seriously, to do a live cross, we used to have to bounce the signal at Hawthorn off a tin shed that used to hit the transmitter up in the Dandenongs. That's how rudimentary it was. Now we're doing a Zoom call. So, yeah, the world changes and it is what you make of it. I mean, let's not forget, in the period I've been at Channel, you know, a reporter, the internet, I watched the first fax machine work at Channel 10 and couldn't believe it. Right? And I remember then they brought in the computers to bring, you know, and got rid of the typewriters. And we thought, oh, how's this going to work? This will never work. And all these stuff. Now, you know, technology is just unbelievable. And 5G is going to take it to a whole new level again. So it's amazing.
Thanks, Eddie, for coming on the podcast today and putting aside an hour or so of your time to come on and have a chat. It's been an absolute privilege and an honor, like I mentioned earlier.
Well, Max, I hope one day I'll look back and say I'm glad I spoke to young Max Becker because he's become a superstar. I want to congratulate you. The way you've presented yourself this morning, your research and your questioning has been absolutely first class. I couldn't have been interviewed by a senior reporter in a better way. In fact, I've had plenty of senior reporters do a far worse job than what you have. I give you 10 out of 10 for what you've done today, and I wish you all the best with everything you're doing. Congratulations, mate, and keep a single-minded approach to where you want to go, and don't ever let anybody tell you can't, okay? You've got everything you need to be a success in life, and I wish you all the best, and I hope to catch up with you again soon.
All right, thanks, Eddie. Stay tuned, everyone, for some more Sporting Max.